A political machine built to guarantee control might just accidentally, hand the keys right over to the opposing team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the math is setting a massive trap, and everyone can see it coming.
Right. So the 2026 California governor race is just exploding into absolute chaos right now. Here are the stakes. 10 candidates have filed to run for the highest office in the state. You've got 8 Democrats and 2 Republicans. But because California uses this unique top 2 jungle primary system, every single candidate competes on one giant ballot.
Yeah, everybody's in the same pool.
Exactly.
All
and
right.
only the top 2 advance to November, totally regardless of their political party. So right now, polls are showing the 2 Republicans, Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco, leading the entire pack with like 16% and 14% of the vote.
Which is wild. And the 8 Democrats are just completely splintering the liberal vote.
Diluting their power completely. And this exact math has triggered this massive, very public panic within the California Democratic Party. Party Chair Rusty Hicks is literally begging underperforming candidates to just drop out to avoid a total lockout.
But they won't. I mean, the candidates refuse to quit. A major televised debate just got canceled over discrimination claims. And through all this noise, voters are just tuning out.
They really are. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we have a stack of incredibly revealing sources on the table. We are looking at official California Democratic Party endorsement guides, some really deep political science research from UC Berkeley, and recent news articles from The Guardian, Cal Matters, and the LA Times.
Some really great reporting in there.
Yeah, really insightful stuff. And I want to be clear with you, the listener, right up front. Because these sources feature some heavily charged opinions from both the left and the right, our mission today isn't to take a side.
No, not at all.
We are strictly acting as your guides to the math, the mechanics, and the campaign strategy found in the source material. We want to help you understand exactly how electoral systems shape the political outcomes that, well, affect your everyday life.
That is the perfect way to frame it. I mean, we are just looking under the hood at the mechanics here.
Yeah.
And to understand why the Democratic Party is panicking today, we have to travel back to 2010.
Right.
Because that is the year California voters actually approved the exact system that set this trap.
Let's unpack that history a bit, because you don't just, wake up one day and decide to completely upend how a whole state votes. There was a specific reason they did this, right?
Oh, totally. There was a huge push for reform back then. The original argument for the top 2 primary was that it would reward moderate candidates and basically break partisan gridlock.
Okay, so how was it supposed to work?
Well, the theory was pretty straightforward. In a traditional closed primary system, Democrats vote on a Democratic ballot and Republicans vote on a Republican ballot.
Right, nice and simple. One team against the other team.
Exactly. And then the winners of those 2 separate contests face off in November. But traditional primaries tend to draw out the most extreme, hardcore voters of each party.
Yeah, the highly engaged base.
Right. And the reformers in 2010 argued that this forced candidates to run to the extreme left or the extreme right just to win their primary. So their solution was this top 2 system, the jungle primary. They decided to just throw everyone into one giant pool.
So all voters, no matter how they're registered, get the exact same ballot.
You got it. They see all the candidates, and only the 2 candidates who get the most votes overall move on to the general election. The system does not care about party labels at all.
It just counts the top 2 totals. So the goal is to force candidates to appeal to the middle. But the UC Berkeley research we're looking at shows a pretty wild side effect of doing that.
Oh, it really does.
Since the system started, about 17% of congressional and state legislative general elections have featured 2 candidates from the exact same party.
Yeah, it fundamentally rewrites the rules of the game. It completely changes the math of winning. And that brings us to the core of the current panic in the 2026 governor's race.
The math trap. Let's talk about how this vote splitting actually works in practice. Because, okay, let's unpack this. It's kind of like a marathon, right?
Okay, I like this.
It's like a marathon where a team enters 8 of their fastest runners, but they all just trip over each other at the starting line, which allows the 2 runners from the other team to literally jog right past them to the finish.
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize it. I mean, let's put some concrete numbers to that concept. Imagine a hypothetical state that is, say, 60% blue and 40% red.
Right.
If you have 5 blue candidates running and they split that 60% evenly, they each only get 12% of the total vote.
Wow, okay.
Right?
Go ahead.
But if you only have 2 red candidates splitting that 40%, they each get 20%.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So the math dictates that the 2 red candidates win the primary and move on to the general election, even though the state as a whole is overwhelmingly blue.
Which is exactly what we are seeing in the current polling data.
Mm.
I mean, the two Republicans, Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco, are capturing the conservative base almost perfectly. They are grabbing those top two spots in the polls with 16 and 14%.
Right.
Meanwhile, you look at the Democrats. Katie Porter, Eric Swalwell, and Tom Steyer are all tied around like 10 to 13%, and everyone else is just trailing in the single digits. So did the people who designed this system realize it could completely lock out the state's dominant party?
Well, they knew it was a mathematical possibility, but the Democratic base is fracturing its support right now while the Republican base is consolidating. And because the math makes a total lockout mathematically possible, party leaders are actively panicking.
Yeah, they are.
They're desperately trying to force candidates out of the race using their official rulebook.
Because the party completely failed to unite behind one candidate at their own convention, so they had to find another way to force people out. Let's look at the official California Democratic Party or CADEM endorsement process.
Yeah, let's get into those rules.
Getting the party's official stamp of approval is a huge deal. It unlocks massive funding, it gets you on the official voter guides, and it sends a clear signal to the base.
But it is incredibly difficult to secure. To get that endorsement, a candidate needs 60% of the delegate votes at the state convention.
60%.
Yeah. And for context, delegates are the hardcore party activists, the local officials, the dedicated volunteers who show up to vote on party business.
And getting 60% of them to agree on anything when there are 8 people running is a massive hurdle. I mean, looking at the convention results from the source material, no one even came close to that threshold.
Not even close.
Eric Swalwell got the most votes, but he only secured around 24%. So the party had to officially declare a quote-unquote no consensus.
Exactly. And without an endorsed frontrunner, the party cannot naturally thin the herd. They have no carrot to offer, right? So they have to use the stick. They rely on strict viability requirements. The party says that before a candidate can even be considered for support, they have to prove they are a serious contender.
And the rules are incredibly intense. I'm looking at the list here. To prove viability, a candidate has to meet one of 4 benchmarks.
Let's hear them.
They must raise $1.5 million or hit 2% in a recognized public poll or gather 1,000 physical delegate signatures or already hold a public office representing 450,000 people. I mean, you have to clear a very high bar just to sit at the grown-ups table.
It's a huge barrier. Unpacking those rules shows just how steep the climb is. Because hitting 2% in a poll sounds easy until you realize that 10 people are running, millions of voters haven't tuned in yet, and the margin of error in most polls is around like 4% anyway.
Right.
And gathering 1,000 delegate signatures in a state as massive as California requires a highly organized, very expensive ground game. The party basically uses these rules as a deliberate filter to weed out weak campaigns.
But even with these strict filters in place,
a single vote in the
U.S.
U.S.
Senate can freeze the most powerful government on Earth.
Still wide open.
But right now,
And this led to a truly
political
unprecedented
standoff
move.
threatens to blow up
Chairman
the rules
Rusty
forever.
Hicks wrote
Yeah,
a public
we are
open
watching
letter
the
begging
fundamental
candidates without
machinery
a
of
viable
American
path to drop
lawmaking
out
just
by April 15th.
grind
Begging
to
them.
an absolute
Yeah,
halt.
he
And
actually
honestly,
warned them
the
about the
physical
lockout
toll on the
scenario.
people inside
He
that
admitted it
building
was
is
highly
about to become
unlikely,
very
but
real.
mathematically
So let's set
possible.
the scene.
And the candidates
It's March
completely
2026.
defied him. They just
Picture the
refused to
hallways
step
of the
down.
United States
One
Capitol right now.
campaign fired back
Aides are
immediately,
literally
stating on the record,
dragging
quote,
military-style
voters
cops
choose the next
into
governor,
back
not
offices.
political gatekeepers.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Staffers are
Another
stockpiling
candidate,
energy
Tony
drinks
Thurmond,
Exactly.
escalated
We're
things
looking at a
even
scenario where
further.
senators might
He
actively
pointed out that the
refuse
party
to
was
drink
essentially
water
telling
just so they don't have to
every
leave the
candidate
floor to
of
use the
color in the
restroom.
race
which
to
is
drop out.
wild, and it's
The
all because the
pushback
Senate
was
is
fierce and
completely
immediate.
deadlocked.
Here's
over
where it
the
gets really
Save
interesting,
America
though.
Act.
Right, that
I have to
big
say,
election
looking at this
overhaul
from a
bill.
voter's
Yeah.
perspective,
It's centered around measures
the
like
candidates
voter
kinda
ID
have a point.
requirements.
Oh, absolutely.
Democrats
If I
were
pay my
aggressively blocking this
$3,500
legislation,
filing fee
and Republicans
and I meet
desperately
all the
want to pass it.
constitutional
But
rules
they
to run
lack
for
the
governor,
60 votes
isn't
required
it
to break the
anti-democratic
stalemate.
for a
Which
party
means
boss to
frustrations
publicly
are
tell me
just
to quit?
boiling
No.
over.
Do these strict
Today,
viability
you have
rules
28
actually help
Republican
voters
senators,
narrow
people like
down their
Pete Ricketts
choices?
and
Or
Cynthia
do they
Lummis,
just protect the party
demanding
elites from
that the
losing
Senate
control
force
of the
a
map?
grueling,
Well, what's
physical,
fascinating here
talking
is that
filibuster.
tension
They want to
is the
force
central
Democrats
conflict
to
of
stand on the
modern
floor
political
and talk
campaigns.
until their vocal
On one
cords
hand,
just give
you
out.
have
And
a
if that
political party
fails,
trying
they
to
want to
survive
break the
a
standing rules
mathematical
of the
system
Senate
that could completely
entirely
destroy
to
them.
force
Right.
a
If
final
they do not
vote.
consolidate,
And the real
they
shocker
lose
dropped
everything.
just
so
a few days
they view
ago.
these rules
Senator
as
John
necessary
Cornyn,
survival tactics.
a man who
But on
fiercely
the other
defended
hand,
the
you
old
have
Senate
the
rules for his
fundamental
entire
democratic
career,
ideal of
just
giving
published
voters
this
maximum
fiery
choice.
op-ed. The party
Right,
wants
saying
ruthless
Republicans must
efficiency,
act now
and
to
the
get this
candidates
bill
want a
passed.
fair
Yeah,
shot
he
to
said
make
they
their
have to
case
deal
the
a
public.
fatal blow to the
Exactly.
rules.
And when those
Which
two
instantly
forces
triggered a massive
collide,
public
the
call-out
fallout
from
is
former Senator Joe
incredibly
Manchin.
messy.
So
Manchin
messy.
slammed
and that
Cornyn
desperation
online
to
for,
filter down
well,
the crowded
a massive
field
flip-flop.
led
Because
right
the
into
rules
how
of the
they
Senate
set up
are
the first
quite literally
major
hanging by a
television
thread
debate.
right now. I mean,
This
the decisions
pressure
made
cooker
in the next few
directly
days will
caused a
dictate
massive
how American
controversy
laws are
over
written
who
for the
actually
next
gets to speak
century.
to the voters.
Because
Welcome to
putting
this
10
deep
people
dive.
on a single debate
Today,
stage
we have
does
a
not
custom
result
mission
in a
tailored just
substantive
for you.
conversation about
We're
policy.
going to
No, it's just
explore the
chaos.
swashbuckling,
It turns into a shouting match
pirate-filled
where everyone
origins
gets
of the
30
filibuster.
seconds to recite
is
a
a
rehearsed
crazy
slogan.
history.
It really is.
Broadcasters know this.
We'll also break
So,
down the
the University
terrifying
of Southern
parliamentary
California
weapon
and
known as the
KABC
nuclear
TV
option.
plan to
And
host a
finally,
major
we will unpack
gubernatorial
a
debate,
mind-bending
but they knew they
mathematical
had to make
concept
cuts.
called the
Think about the
Manchin
last time you
paradox.
tried to
Right,
research
which
local
proves
candidates.
exactly why politicians use
probably relied
gridlock as
on
a
a
highly
televised debate
calculated
to see how they handle
mathematical
pressure.
strategy.
Now imagine
So,
the gatekeepers
by the end of this
deciding you weren't allowed to
conversation,
hear from half the
you will
field.
hold the secret decoder
USC
ring
used a
for
strict
the
formula
chaos you
to
see on
select
the
the
news.
participants.
You will
They based it
understand
on
the
polling
hidden
numbers
game
and
theory
fundraising totals.
that
And the
drives these
academic
high-stakes
organizers defended the
showdowns.
formula
Absolutely.
heavily.
Okay, let's
They
unpack
argued it
this.
was data-driven
Before we can
and
truly
purely
grasp
objective.
the physical
A group
threats
of
and the
50
massive
public policy
stakes
scholars
of this
even wrote a public
2026
letter
FZV
backing them
America
up,
Act
stating that
standoff.
without objective metrics,
We really need to look
debate
at what the
inclusion is
filibuster
just
actually
based on
is.
subjective
And more importantly, how it
bias.
started.
But the political reality
because
of
it
that
wasn't
objective
designed this way
formula
by
was
the founders,
explosive.
right?
Right.
Like this wasn't
The
in
formula
blueprint.
invited
Not at all.
only
If
white
you read the U.S.
candidates.
Yeah, that was a
Constitution, you
bad
will
look.
not find the
That
word
included the
filibuster
two Republicans,
anywhere in the text.
Hilton
Well,
and Bianco,
nowhere.
Nowhere.
plus Democrats
The
Steyer,
Constitution
Porter,
basically gives the
Swalwell,
Senate the
and
authority
Matt
to set its
Mahan.
own internal
In
rules.
doing so,
back in
the formula
1789,
completely
during the
excluded
very
four
first
established
sessions,
candidates
debates
of color.
ended with just a simple
Xavier
majority
Becerra,
vote.
Antonio
Okay, so
Villaraigosa,
51 votes,
Betty Yee,
and you're done.
and Tony
Exactly.
Thurmond.
People were
But there was
outraged.
this massive
And the
loophole.
focus of that outrage
They
quickly
never
zeroed in on the
codified a
inclusion of
specific
San Jose Mayor
procedure
Matt
to force a
Mahan.
vote
It's
to
like setting a
happen
height
if someone
requirement for
simply
a roller
refused to stop
coaster.
talking.
Yeah.
But the ruler you use
So
only
without a
measures how
mechanism
thick
to
your
cut
wall
off
is.
debate,
Mahan entered the race months after everyone else. He was
hold the
polling
floor
in
hostage.
the single
They
digits.
did.
Right.
We
But
actually
he
have
qualified
diaries
for
from the
that
very
debate
first
stage
session
simply
of the
because he
Senate.
raised massive amounts of
Pennsylvania
money
Senator
from Silicon
William
Valley
McClay wrote down
billionaires.
his sheer frustration
When
that
a latecomer
senators
buys
from
their way
Virginia
onto a
were
stage while
intentionally
former
talking
mayors
away
and
the
an
clock.
attorney general
just to make
get
sure a
locked out,
specific bill
it
couldn't
forces us
pass.
to ask,
Right. They
does the
literally
formula actually
weaponized
measure
the clock.
viability?
I mean, if they were
Or
holding
does
the
it just
legislative
measure
process
wealth?
hostage,
Well,
it
it
makes perfect
primarily
sense
measures
why the
access
press
to
eventually
capital.
started
The
calling them
academic
pirates.
argument that the formula is
Which brings us to the actual
completely
word
ignores the fact that the
filibuster.
inputs
Yeah,
themselves
it's
are biased.
easily one of the
How's it?
strangest
Polling
words in
requires
American
name
politics.
recognition.
So where does it come from?
Buying name recognition.
The etymology
requires
is
massive
fascinating,
advertising
honestly. The
budgets.
term really took hold in the
Fundraising requires an
1850s.
existing network
It comes
of
from the
wealthy
Dutch word
donors.
"vrijbuiter"
The formula measures
and the
who can play
Spanish
the
word
modern expensive
"filibustero,"
campaign
Which
game the
translates
best.
directly
It does
to
not
freebooter
necessarily
or
measure
pirate,
who
right?
has
Yes.
the most experience governing
Specifically,
a complex
the
state.
mercenaries
Exactly.
and pirates
And when that
who raided
formula
Caribbean
systematically
islands and Latin
excludes
American
minority
countries
candidates
during
with
that
decades
era,
of public
So they were
service,
calling these
the
distinguished
entire
senators
system's
pirates.
legitimacy
Pretty
was
much.
called into question.
The term
And
entered
the
the political
backlash was
lexicon
severe.
because
The Black and
observers
Latino
recognized the
legislative
behavior.
caucuses threatened a
Senators who
total
talked
boycott
for
of the debate.
hours
They
were
called the
literally
criteria
hijacking the Senate
discriminatory
floor.
and demanded
Like
a
taking the
change.
government
And it
hostage,
worked.
just like a
It
pirate
did.
taking
USC
over a ship.
completely
Exactly.
canceled the debate.
So let's
They
track
put out
how
a
the
statement
Senate
saying
tried
the
to fight off
controversy
these
had become
legislative
a,
pirates.
quote unquote, significant
Because as the country
distraction.
grew,
So the politicians
you couldn't
are
just
fighting
have one
over
person
debate
shut down the
stages,
entire
party
government for weeks on
endorsements,
end.
and
No,
fundraising
you couldn't.
formulas.
But it took a
The
long
party
time to
bosses
build
are
a
fighting
defense.
the
By the
candidates.
early
But we
20th
really need
century,
to
these
zoom out and
marathon
look at how
speeches
this
became
chaotic system
catastrophic
actually
for a
impacts the
modernizing
person
nation.
filling out
I
the
can
ballot.
imagine.
So
How does this
finally, in
affect you, the
1917,
voter?
President
That's the
Woodrow
real
Wilson
question.
pushed
And
the
to answer
Senate to
that,
adopt
we have to
Rule
dive back
22.
into the UC Berkeley study
This
we
rule
mentioned
created
earlier.
a formal process called
Because the
cloture,
researchers uncovered a
okay,
massive paradox
which is simply a
about
mechanism
voter
to force an end to
behavior
debate.
under this
But
top two
here's
system.
the catch.
It
It
creates a
required a
completely
massive
conflicting experience
two-thirds
for the
majority
electorate.
vote.
It really does.
Two-thirds, wow.
The study
Which is an
highlights two
incredibly
major
steep hill to
findings that
climb.
seem to contradict
So
each other.
steep that over
First,
the next 4
the system
decades,
absolutely
the Senate
works to
only
create
managed to
competition
successfully
where there
invoke
used to be
cloture
none.
5
Right.
times.
In heavily
That is
partisan districts,
wild.
Yeah.
places where
Southern
one
senators
party usually
famously
wins
use
without
this
breaking a
exact
sweat,
tool to block
general
civil
elections
rights
between two
legislation for
candidates of the
years.
exact same
The
party
gridlock
are
grew
actually
so
highly
intense that in
competitive.
1975,
And the numbers back that up
the Senate
clearly.
lowered
The
that
study found that
threshold from
62%
down to
of same-party
60
races
out
have
of
a
the
winning margin of
100
under
total
60%.
senators.
Compare
Okay.
the
And
traditional
that 60
Democrat
versus
versus Republican
threshold is
races,
the number that
where only
dominates our politics
38% are
today.
that
Exactly.
close.
Wow.
But here's where I think
Yeah.
a lot of people get
When two
confused.
Republicans or
When we
two
hear the word
Democrats face off
filibuster,
in November,
we don't just
it
think
is
of a
real
60
fight.
vote math
They can't just
problem.
rely on
We
party
picture
loyalty.
Jimmy
They Stewart and Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
Right, the
In that
classic
sense,
movie
the system
scene.
achieves its original
We picture a
2010
single
goal
person
of
standing at a
increasing
podium,
competition
reading the
and
phone
forcing
book,
debate.
sweating, refusing
But
to
the
sit
second
down.
finding of the study
But senators
reveals the
rarely do
dark
that
side of the
anymore.
system.
Why don't they have to
It
physically
directly
talk
causes
today?
a phenomenon
That is a crucial
known
piece
as
of the puzzle.
voter
So
roll-off.
in the
Wait, let me see if
1970s,
I
the
have this
Senate
right.
created
So
something
if I
called
am a
the
loyal
two-track
Democrat,
system.
the two-track system,
But I live in a
deeply
Well,
conservative
before the
district in
system, a
California.
filibuster
Under
stopped
the old
all Senate
system,
business
I
completely.
could at least vote for
Nothing
the
else
token
could
Democratic
happen.
candidate in
The Senate
November,
realized they had a
even
whole
if they were
country
going
to
to
run,
lose.
so they
Right.
changed the procedure.
But under the
Makes
top
sense.
two system,
Under the
I
new
look at my
system, if
general
a
election
senator simply
ballot,
threatened to
and I only
filibuster a
see two
bill,
Republicans.
the Senate
I don't have a
leadership
horse in
would
the
just
race.
set that
Do I just skip the
controversial bill
question
aside
entirely?
on a different
That is
track and
exactly
move
what
on to
happens.
other
You might vote for
business.
president,
Oh,
you vote for your
wow.
local
So they made it
propositions, but you
painless.
look at the
You didn't have
governor's
to
race,
stand up and destroy
feel
your vocal
entirely
cords anymore. You
unrepresented,
just sent
and
an
leave it
email
blank.
saying,
You roll off the
I
ballot.
object,
And the
the bill
statistics
was
are
frozen.
significant.
The
Like a
UC
silent
Berkeley study shows a
filibuster.
You capture the
4.4
dynamic
percentage point
perfectly.
drop in
The
voting for
physical
that
endurance
specific race
requirement basically
when it is a
vanished.
same-party election.
But the physical records
Thousands
from
of people
before
just
and
abstained
outside
from
that silent
participating in
system,
democracy.
Which
those
perfectly
remain pretty
aligns with the
legendary.
general
absolutely.
mood of the
Strom
electorate
Thurmond
right now.
spoke
I
against
mean,
the Civil Rights
pollsters
Act in
and political
1957,
columnists like
for
Dan
24
Walters
hours
over
in
at
Calmatters.
Imagine finding out your
describe
own 4
voters
hours.
as
And the
disengaged
modern
and
individual records
literally
massive
sleepwalking
voting addiction.
through this
It
current
is a
election cycle.
pretty
In
shocking
April
realization when you
2025,
actually
he noted that
look
because
at
the
the
candidates
candidates
are
are just
astonishing
imagine for a
25
second
hours
that
and
you
5
have a
minutes
savings account.
against
They
the
lack
policies
nuances
of the
and-
Donald Trump administration. They all sound identical.
I
and
mean, just
voters
think
are
about the
freaking out.
bodily
And
reality
reality
of 25
what does this all
hours.
mean
This
for the
money
health
cannot
strictly
for
down?
fixing a
You
leaking
cannot
roof.
lean
Lean
on
on
your
change
desk.
You
creates
can't
a
even
highly
leave the
competitive
chamber
race
for a
against this
bathroom
roof.
break.
But in
It is a
reality,
house
it's
is
going to
brutal,
force
It's an
dangerous,
existential
thousands of
crisis for
frustrated
the
people.
House.
Exactly,
It's
to
their
save the
balance
house
line.
fund. It really
Is that
reminds me of
actually
a
how
past
your car
car
breaks
you're
down?
on a train. You spend a
Well,
little
if we
size
connect this to the
groceries,
bigger
you got bills
picture, we
piling
have to
up,
recognize
so what do
how
you do?
human
Throwing
beings
everyone else
process
into the walls
complex
just because they
information.
don't like the
Pay off
final
your
desk
voters
card.
rely heavily on
It is a
everybody.
highly
The
disruptive
D
maneuver.
or
Wait,
the
that
R
raises a
next to
glaring
the
question,
candidate's
though.
name
The
is
roof
immense
of this
discredit.
rule is
It
so
immediately
these
tells the
climate
voter the
rebels.
candidate's
Every
general
car is a
moral
massive
value.
self-inflicted
hates
When
it.
those
One
labels are removed, or
$1.5
when they're
billion.
duplicated,
Why
or
haven't
two
they
Democrats
voted to
running against
destroy
each
it?
other,
Completely avoidable.
that
Voters'
is the
primary
core
mental
tension
Welcome to the deep
of the
dive.
United
Oh, I
States
see.
Senate
Today
race.
we're
Suddenly
exploring
the
a
reason
classic
the
case
filibuster
of
survives
justice
is
sleight of
that
hand
permanently
coming out of
very
Minneapolis.
similar candidates
We're
so
looking at the
extreme
strategic
and so
energy
destructive
demand
to the
significantly
institution
more
that it
effort
earned
from
a
the voter.
terrifying
It's a
nickname.
And when the
huge
voter
pot of
doesn't
option.
have the time
Exactly.
or energy
The
to learn
nuclear
that
option.
effort,
It sounds like a
turning into
Cold
a
War
hippie
thriller.
tax. Let's
Exactly.
walk through the actual
The
floor
top
mechanics.
two
Being an
system
electric
asks
bill
for a
in Maryland
highly
actually
engaged,
really is.
moderate
It's
to
on the
center of
Okay,
a
let's
huge
break down the
political
parliamentary
nuances.
cheat
You've
code.
got a Democratic governor,
changing
frustrated
standards,
environmentalists
written
making
rules
some
that
very
Senate is
awkward
overwhelmed
compromises,
by
and
crowded
conservative
primaries,
critics who are rightly
Which in
calling
our
this
highly
whole thing a
polarized
shell
this has
game.
been a
fascinating
fascinating
look
securing
when you look at the
67
documents
votes
we
to
have
change
today,
the
thank you
rule.
for taking
Reports,
this basically
deep dive
budget
mathematics,
proposals
to
to summarize the core
irony
So they found a
from
is
backdoor.
really hard
A
to
backdoor.
understand.
primary
Yeah,
system
backdoor
built in
that
2010
bypasses
to
the
reward
60
moderate
money vote
candidates
requirement
always
and
follow
increase
the
voter
We are going to
engagement
see
has
how a
instead created a
process designed to
mathematical
fight
nightmare for
climate
the Democratic
change
Party in
is being used
2026.
to
First,
pull
the Senate
majority
Instead of
leader
public
stands
panic,
up and we'll dig into
cause
the
the
argument that
cancellation
they
of
haven't
debates,
found money at all.
and
They basically
ultimately
tell
force
the
voters
presiding
to
officer
It is
that
a
on
profound
written rule
lesson
Let's
means
get
something
right into it.
entirely
The
different.
Strategic
Changing
Energy
rules
Investment
always
Fund. It
changes.
sounds
So the majority
very
leader
fair,
basically
very
stands
important.
up and
What's
claims
it
the
actually
And I want to
sky
leave you
is
with
blue.
one final
essentially
thought on
all
paper.
Go
Then
for
the
it.
presiding
It is
officer
the
looks at the
electoral
fiscal
system
rulebook and
like the
says,
top
no,
SII
is
is
managed
managed
by
by
the
the
Maryland
Maryland
Energy. The
Rewire,
text
how
says what it
politicians
says,
stated
Which is the
purpose,
only
and
logical
determines who gets
response.
left out before November
here's the
even
trick.
arrives. Majority leader
Imagine what
immediately
would happen
appeals
if
to the
solar
state
panels and
suddenly switched
efficiency
to a
upgrades.
system like standard Senate
But
procedure.
here is
Oh,
the
wow.
Deciding an
aha
appeal
moment.
would
Only
that
requires
finally
a
fix
simple
chaos
majority
and guarantee
guarantee
everyone a
actually
voice,
comfort.
or
The
would it
majority
just invent
parties
a
aren't
brand
just
new
mechanism
mechanism
to
to override
override
to
chair.
accidentally sabotage?
No,
the
and that's
moment
why
they hit
politicians
51
absolutely
votes,
love it.
they
Until next
establish
time.
a
So
brand
remember,
new
40%
binding
comes from
precedent
regional
that
America
completely
isn't the finish
overwrites
line.
the
But the
official
tripping over your own
teammates
growing
at the
like
start.
crazy